Hi everyone, I'm Adam Steele and welcome back to the Reaper 101 series. Today we are looking at virtual drums, VST drum plugins, and how to split out all the separate parts in Reaper, like getting the kick drum, snare, toms, all that kind of stuff on their own separate channels so that you can mix them as you would a real drum kit, which will help you to get much finer control over your sound and also kind of get your own kind of sound. We're going to do this with Superior Drummer 3 and Extinction Level Event by Spectre Digital today. Before we do, quick note that this is all brought to you by the Ultimate Reaper Guide, which is from Pro Mix Academy, where I take you through everything right from the very beginning of getting started with Reaper in ultimate detail, all the way through to really advanced cool stuff that can really kind of enhance your workflow and make things nice and fast and efficient for you. And then we even go into recording, mixing and mastering an entire song in Reaper to show you how I do everything that I do and use a lot of those features in a practical aspect. On with the show. So in previous sections we've talked about Reaper having tracks and channels and those being relatively indiscriminate. So we're going to start by opening up Superior Drummer 3. There are plenty of drum plugins out there. We're not going to cover every single one in this video, but the idea as far as Reaper is concerned is always the same. So if you're using Slate Drums 5 or Addictive Drums or BFD or something that I'm not covering today, it's worth watching this video anyway, because once you see how I'm doing this, that will translate exactly the same to whatever drum plugin you have that isn't the one that is shown here. Let's start by opening up Superior Drummer. I've made myself a stereo track and I'm going to open the effects window and type in Superior Drummer, and I'm going to go for the VST3 version, although in this case it really doesn't matter which one you're using, it works the same way in terms of splitting out the channels each time. So that's going to load itself up, and I'm just going to pull up a preset for this today. Let's go with pop rock and indie rock room. Could be anything you like. You don't have to use a preset. You can choose your own drums in whatever drum software you're using. That's not the point of this video. This is just me getting a nice, decent, usable sound. Now, I'm quickly going to go into the Grooves tab. This is a useful thing that we find in Superior Drummer, is that I can just drag one of the grooves onto the MIDI playback here. So when I now hit play, we're now hearing a drum groove. I'm going to turn down the master volume in Superior a little bit, and that affects the level of every separate drum, every separate microphone, because I don't want to be blasting out at absolute maximum volume. That's really not good for mixing when you've got other channels like guitars, bass, all that kind of stuff going on, because very quickly everything will start to clip and overload the master bus, and I don't want that. Now if I put loop on with the R button and press play, sounds pretty good. I can change the tempo, change the volume of everything overall, but this, if I close the window down, is a single source in Reaper. This is stereo out, and there's really not a lot I can do with that. I mean, yes, I could use compression, EQ, all that kind of stuff, but it's very much on just the stereo drum bus, or as I would call it, the master drum bus. So what we're going to do today is break this out in two different ways. So the first way is kind of the long-winded kind of way, but I want to show you the long-winded way so that you understand how this works, so that when I show you the shortcut, if something isn't working as you wanted it to, you then understand how that short version works and can change things how you want them. Firstly, I'm going to save this project. Let's just call this drum breakout. And that's now saved. We've got MIDI on this channel, but there's no actual audio on here. Like I've said before, Reaper is not discriminate about tracks. This is a track that has a drum plugin on it and has some MIDI information that is feeding the drum plugin. Now if I open up the plugin window again and go to the mixer A lot of the channels have been hidden for convenience on this particular preset, but that's okay for now. What I really need to do is look at the way this is routed. So each one of these microphones in here, we can do things like EQ and compression and all that kind of processing inside Superior Drummer using their own plugins, which is a useful thing to have. But what if we want to use our own plugins, our external plugins, maybe third-party plugins, use this to manipulate in a way that can't be done inside of Superior Drummer? In that case, that's when we're going to break out these channels. Now, you can see by default, each one of these has been defined with an output. So the outputs here, they say kick, kick, kick for the kick channels, snare and snare for the snare channels, cymbals, hi-hat, toms, toms, cymbals, ambience. Now those have been defined inside Superior Drummer, and those are going over here to these yellow channels, which are buses. Now all of these buses are going out to outputs. They're all currently set to output 1 and 2, which is actually going to the red channel over here, output 1 and 2, which has some processing going on there. I'm going to remove that processing just for the sake of simplicity for this video. So that's all turned off now. So everything that we hear is going out of output 1. Now let's say that we wanted kick, snare, toms, cymbals, ambience, which is the room microphones, and that compressor channel, which is a parallel thing, which is very cool, to come out of their own separate channels in Reaper. So what I'm going to want to do, well, firstly at the top, there's edit visibility, show all channels. If I do that, suddenly we'll see every single channel, including all 16 stereo outputs. If we look at the top right of this plugin, we'll see that it says 2/32 out, which means we're currently using 2 outputs, which is stereo, and it can give you up to 32 outputs. So we need to do 3 separate steps. We need to tell Superior Drummer where we want each one of these outputs to go to. We then in Reaper need enough tracks to handle all that, and then we need our plugin for Superior Drummer to send each one of those separate sounds out to its own track. So what I'm going to do is do these in a logical order. So in the same order that they're in these buses right here, I'm going to go kick out to 1 and 2, and think of these as stereo pairs because it makes life easier. Even if a kick drum is mono, even if a snare drum is mono, thinking in stereo pairs in Reaper makes life a little easier. So I'm going to go kick out to 1 and 2, snare out to 3 and 4, toms out to 5 and 6, cymbals out to 7 and 8, ambience out to 9 and 10, compression out to 11 and 12. Now if I hit play, we won't hear very much apart from that kick drum. We can see all these meters going, and if we move over to our outputs here, we can see all of our output meters moving, but we don't hear anything apart from the kick drum because the kick drum is still going out of output 1 and 2, and our track here is going to the master output in Reaper. So what I'm going to do now is make enough tracks. I'm going to quickly close the Superior window down, and I'm going to make enough tracks in Reaper to hold everything. So I'm going to double click in this blank space here and go kick, snare, toms, hats, or overheads I think it was, then ambience, then compression. And for my own sanity, I'm going to name them kick, snare, toms, cymbals, ambient, and comp. You can name them whatever you like, but this keeps it the same for me. Now, in Superior, the next thing that I need to do is where it says 2/32 out, I can click on that and that will give me the plugin pin connector. There are a few ways to change the number of channels that a track has, but this is a nice shortcut for that plugin. So if I drop down VST track channels, that'll give me a huge list. And how many do we need? 2 for kick, 2 for snare, 2 for toms, 2 for cymbals, 2 for ambience, 2 for compression. So that's 12. So it's 6 times 2. So I'm going to change this to have 12 outputs. And now you can see in this plug-in pin connector, each one of those channels that we've defined has been given an output of its own. So now they literally go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is now a 12 output channel. Now if I hit play, you'll still only hear the kick drum. But you'll be able to see a whole load of meters moving for Superior now. Because now Superior is trying to throw all of those 12 channels out. Only 2 of them are making it to our ears because by default, 1 and 2 go to the master output, which is what we hear. So now we need to close this down and open up our routing page, which is where we have these green bars. So I'm going to open this up. It's called Variation 01 because I dragged the MIDI on, but let's just call this Superior 3 in capital letters so I know that that's the instrument, and open up that routing again. The first thing I want to do is untick the master send, because now we don't have any sound coming straight from that channel. This is good for the mind. It's good to have 1 and 2 to that kick drum as a separate thing. So if I hit play, now we hear nothing. And that's fine because now we start adding sends. So I'm going to add a send to our kick channel. So audio 1 and 2 is going to go to 1 and 2 of the kick. I'm going to add another one for the snare, but I'm going to change the output audio here to stereo source 3 and 4. So now where snare was on 3 and 4, now we should hear kick and snare. Let's go back to the routing window and I'll quickly just do this again 4 more times. So I'll add toms, I'll add cymbals, I'll add ambient, and I'll add comp. And then I'll change all of these to be stereo source 5 and 6, stereo source 7 and 8, stereo source 9 and 10, and stereo source 11 and 12. And now each one of those is sending the channels we want it to have to its own track. So now everything's split out in Reaper. So now I can solo my cymbals maybe. I can solo my ambience. I can solo the compression channel. Even though you don't see any wave files on here, that's okay, because you don't need to have the wave files there because Superior is feeding audio into those tracks at all times. Now we've looked at folders, so what I would like to do here is just have another folder called drums, and then I'm going to drag that up to the top, and I'm going to put all of these tracks now inside a folder, and now I have a drum group. So when I solo this, I can do things like clever things like parallel compression on the overall drum bus if I choose, and I can use any plugins I like on these separate channels. Now I did that with the kick bus, the snare bus, the toms bus. You can do this with as many tracks as you like. Superior has 32 outputs, so what you can do is you could go each separate microphone to its own separate channel if you so desire. So you can be as kind of simple or as complex as you like with this. You can really split it out into lots and lots of channels if that's what works for you. I tend to do some basic submixing inside Superior. Things like with the toms, I tend to do little bits of EQ and then send them out of a tom group. Make sure that all the toms are kind of fixed together, all that kind of stuff. Although if I'm having issues with one particular tom, then I might change my mind and split them out. Really depends on the song, depends on the mix, depends on what I am doing. Now, let's do exactly the same thing with Extinction Level Event and then show you some of the shortcuts. So ELE is part of Contact. If you've bought Extinction Level Event from Spectre Digital, you will have an instance of Contact or Contact Player installed, and then you will have to drag and drop the kit on here and it will get loading on its own. And that will be exactly the same as it was before, with the stereo track being all you have. Now this takes a little more work in Kontakt, and that's because Kontakt is a bit of a pain. I'm going to change the output here from stereo out in the shells to multi-out advanced. And I need to find a little hidden window in Kontakt, which up at the top next to the cog is a little Windows button. If I click that, there is outputs. And that's what I need. I need to add outputs in here. So I've got a first stereo output. If I went back into the drum kit here and hit a drum, you'll see everything coming out of the stereo 1. So we'll do a similar method to what we did before. We'll add some outputs. We need to define a number of outputs. So in this case, I'm going to say, let's have 5 outputs that are stereo, and not connect them because it does kind of a slightly annoying thing. I'm going to start with aux1 actually and go ascending output assignment tick. Delete existing channels before creating new ones, tick. Okay, and that has made me now 5 stereo outputs, and I could do that with more stereo outputs if I desire. Now, one thing that's a bit strange about Kontakt is even though I've made all these outputs, they don't show up in my plugins immediately. What I have to do is completely close Kontakt and then open it again. One way to do that is to close the entire Reaper project, but another little trick is if I right click on where Kontakt is, I can hit offline effects and that completely removes it. Wait a few seconds and then right click on the offline effects again. And that will bring Kontakt back online completely fresh. Now, if I go to my drop downs, now I've got stereo 2, stereo 3, stereo 4, stereo 5. So what I could do now is have my kicks be out of output 1, snare tops and snare bottoms and everything out of stereo 2, toms out of stereo 3 maybe, and then front of kit I'm going to go stereo 4, cymbals mix, everything stereo 4, and then have all my rooms out of stereo 5, and that way, that's just the way that I'm doing it this time, but you could have more channels if you like. You could do this with a more complicated routing. We're still not going to hear much, but the shortcut that I'm going to show you now is what saves me quite a bit of time with the Reaper side of things, which is if I go to the effects at the top. This is where it gets a little bit clever. I've closed Kontakt down and I'm going to specifically open the effects window. This is the one that's got the kind of the boxes around Kontakt or whatever plugin you're using, because this is where a list of effects would be. And this reveals an extra little secret. If I go to edit at the top now, there is, if I click on Kontakt and have that highlighted, if I go to edit, I get build multi-channel routing for output of selected effects. If I click that, it'll ask me, do you want to add all of this? I'll hit yes. And now you'll see that Reaper has an entire horde of tracks, lots and lots. And so if I hit the Kontakt drums now, where's that coming from? Now, one little thing that I've found that's relatively new with this is when I did this, it gave me a whole ton of mono tracks, which is not what I wanted. A lot of these are stereo. So I'm just quickly going to delete a lot of these channels, but I'm going to keep the Kontakt. And what I did to fix this is if I open the effects window here, I can drop down where it's got the plugin connector with these whole host of tracks, and underneath it says IO. And so I can click the IO and change request VST3 bus channel count and click stereo. And that's going to give me stereo tracks this time round, and change it all to be not just mono tracks for everything, it's going to give me stereo tracks. Now, if I go to edit and build multi-channel routing, and And there we go, that's how I've split out these separate channels so that I can mix them accordingly. I can do that with the stereo method that you saw me doing the first with Superior, which is kind of a little more slow and methodical. But once that's all done as well, if you're happy with the layout, you can save it as a track template so you don't have to do it again. So let's say this was exactly how I wanted it. I would select all of these tracks up to where I need them and just not worry about the ones that don't contain any sound. And then I could go up to the top to track and then save tracks as track template. And let's just call this drum routing. And then if I just delete all of this, or I've got a new project or anything that I've been working on and I say, you know what, I need my drum setup with all the complicated routing and everything, I just go to track, insert track from template, and there it is, drum routing. So I click that and that will bring up everything pre-routed for me. So that can save me a whole ton of time. You don't have to do this for every project. Alternatively, another little cheat that I do is if I've got two project tabs open, like I'm running kind of Chrome, I can open an older project of mine and then just copy paste out of the old. So with copy into the new with paste, and that will bring over all the setup that I need. I can do that with, like, I could copy, you know, drums, guitar buses, effects buses, all that kind of stuff out of an older project without bringing over everything else. It will bring in the audio if you do this, but you can quickly just delete the audio off those tracks. And hey presto, I've saved myself tons of time, which is what this is all really about. So there you go. In the next section, we're going to look at automation, which is making all of these tracks and all these parameters of everything dance to our will and move when and where we want them. This is, of course, brought to you by the Ultimate Reaper Guide on Pro Mix Academy. The link is down in the description below if you want to look at me talk about everything, every cool little trick and feature in as much detail as I possibly can. Check that down in the link in the description below. And for now, thanks for everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.